but when you're dealing with like building people up, sometimes you might even need to build people up with things which are not directly inside the obvious place of Kedusha. When you go and develop someone's talent in music and art, and you see the stories with the Rebbe regarding especially the artists, right? You develop people's talents in these kind of things, and these are things that are actually good. And again, the Eibishter made them talented in art. Nefesh Habehamis, precise. For a reason, made them talented in music. If we just go and ignore that, and I've read in the places in other communities, they will shun, people for a good mind shun that. It's a distraction.
Right.
It's a distraction from your avodah. And we would go and say, the Eibishter did that for a reason. Now again, be very careful. You don't let that. Nefesh Habehamis is right next to the Yetzer Hara.
Right.
The Yetzer Hara is the midas, and they can pull in. You've got to be very, very careful, very cautious. But I would say, building people up means building them up where the Nefesh Habehamis is. And when I'm dealing with Bachrim or with friends and people, it's all about finding the spark. And there is a spark.
You know when you're at a good Teichendike Farbrengen and you wish it was being recorded? Welcome to Spreading the Springs, Conversations in Chassidus, a podcast for Bringen where we have real conversations about real Chassidus. Okay, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
We are sitting here with Rabbi Yossi Klein, originally from Manchester, right?
Yep.
England, and currently a Mashpia, I think we could call it that.
It's a heavy word, but yeah.
in YOEC Mesivta. Let's start with just a bit of background, specifically focused on how you entered the Mashpia position. Obviously, not the legalities and the contracts, but more the mindset. Like, what pushed you? What got you there? Was it something you always thought of? Was it something specific that was a catalyst? Go ahead.
So I'll tell you, it's interesting because I as a bacher, took me time to find myself, and I felt as a bacher I struggled a lot. And in certain ways, I think I felt like certain things at the time, and I think the whole world's shifted a lot, but certain things at the time I didn't feel like was addressed, like me as a person with my personality and my struggle. I didn't feel like I was given. So it was subtly in my mind, maybe in the background as I was a bacher and I was like developing to myself and getting more confident, and maybe I would go into chinuch and into yeshiva, but it wasn't a really big thing. I remember once my neighbor actually, when I was just maybe engaged or something, he was in my house, he's like, I'm a Makurav to Lubavitch, not Mamish Lubavitch, and he's like, your personality, you're perfect for shlichus, and why would you be going into chinuch? And you're perfect, and sometimes I actually feel like, there's something about shlichus, everything's got its, But what really ended up happening is that I was an Alter Bacher in Arachana and Yeshiva, and during that time, I ran a Seder Chassidus. Didn't feel to me like I was that successful, but I had good friends that were busy there at the time in Yeshiva. And then when I was engaged, I came back to LA just for a few weeks. And during that time, a friend of mine, I took over his class and ended up teaching. And I ended up, one Shabbos, we actually went with a bunch of 10 Bachrim in YOEC Mesivta, and I went through V'yodaita. From beginning to end, we sat down for 10 hours over Friday, Shabbos, Sunday in their own time. It was amazing.
Learning it inside?
Learning it inside. Went through the whole V'yodaita. It was a very, very, very powerful experience for me and for these Bachrim. I wasn't even a teacher, but that opened something up. But I think the Manal, in Mesivta saw that. And then what happened is that, I got engaged, got married. I got married. I actually wanted to live in America, interestingly, but I was from England, and I just said, okay, so I'll have to live in England. There's some documents, and right after, about a month after I got married, Rabbi Farakash reached out to me and asked me if I wanted to come, and there was an opportunity to come back to something I cared about. And I was kind of young at the time, didn't really think much, which might have been to the benefit. And I think some of the benefits is that, the big decisions we do when we're relatively young, so we don't overthink them. And I went in there without really thinking that much, and here I am. Right. Good 8 years in now. But then her.
Wow, 8 years. Mm-hmm. Wow.
It's my 9th year now.
So first of all, what age do you teach now?
So I do YOEC Mesivta. Mm-hmm. So it's a very important age. Kind of works better with my personality because, at least in my shitta and my perspective and what I want, I like a little bit more hands off. Sometimes when I'm insecure, we step into trying to control a little bit, but my approach is, give a bit of space, and I wanted us, a little bit of touch more of a maturity. The Zal is a whole other different league, so Shigimel ended up, and in LA, I felt like the Eibishter clearly took me to the place where I was meant to be. So I do YOEC Mesivta. My main time is I do 3 hours of Iyun with, quote unquote, with the weaker Gemara class. But for me, very much, I use that as a platform to just share Yiddishkeit, and I have different things I do within Gemara, like after Gemara, different curriculums I've set up just to kind of share ideas of Yiddishkeit and Chassidus to them, to these Bachrim, because a lot of them in LA, it's actually, there's an English program. So a lot of them, they've not really that much time in Kodesh. The whole afternoon is English. So Iyun, and I spend the most time with them. I'm the one representing Kedusha who spends the most time with them. And then by night, say, I have his Tanya thing. Maybe we can discuss later on his Tanya curriculum I have. We went through the whole Tanya Legirsa, and something I've maybe doing for like 7 years. And then a big part is for ringing with Bachrim. And that's really when we really, really connect. And it's on the one hand, it's the hardest thing, because it's very vulnerable and you have to let go. But on the other hand, it's the most powerful thing. You really connect with Bachrim, especially at the end of the Farbrengen when it kind of winds down and the Bachrim come around, you talk to them one-on-one. It's a very, very, very powerful thing. And for me, actually, my passion is really the connecting neshama to neshama. And through everything, through life, through Yiddishkeit, Chassidus, but it's just about connecting with people and having that connection, which is really the platform for Hashbar, really. I think connection is my thing that I really care about a lot.
Right. So here's a question. It's the same Bachrim that you teach Gemara and you're teaching Tanya in the night, Seder, and then for
so the class is split into two. I do the for Gemara, I'm doing the lower half officially, and then for night Seder, it's a program we've created for the entire Shigimel. Really works best for the top half because we're doing like a parak every 2 days and there's momentum, and but it's for everyone, so everyone's there. And then by Farbrengen for everyone. Sometimes you make smaller Farbrengens for just my Gemara class, but
so I'm asking because you have this group that you're just teaching Gemara to.
Yeah, but I'm speaking to them one-on-one.
And you're sneaking, and like you said, you're sneaking Chassidus into that.
Yeah, so sometimes during the Gemara class, sometimes I have this curriculum I create. I call it Yadus, but really it's just broader Yiddishkeit. So I talk about Midas Tovas, I talk through all different kinds of things, regarding, working on yourself, overcoming nisyonos, anger, taiva, jealousy. I talk through a lot of these things, as self-development, and that's a time where I create more discussion, because a lot of these Bachrim, unfortunately, they're kind of a little bit burnt out from Gemara. That's the way they're coming in. So for me, it's very important to make it be all a good experience and to make sure that so the last half hour every day I'm teaching more broader things, and I'm trying to always just use it as just trying to make it be a nice environment of learning, because a lot of them, the logic of Gemara currently, again, hopefully I have new ideas how to break through that, but currently they have a very hard time with it. So trying to use it as a way of just connecting with them, spending time with them, being that structure for them in learning, and then, but it's really, my goal is really to kind of be a role model for them. There's Baruch Hashem actually in Shigim, we've got 3 different teachers, Mashpia, and we're all very different personalities, and that's, I think that's the advantage, that we, different Bachrim connect with different ones of us, each according to his personality. They've got, and we all Baruch Hashem as an Hala respect each other very much, and we respect our differences, and it's a very beautiful environment. So I have a lot of Bachrim, a certain kind, which are attracted to what I have to offer and what I bring in, and I connect with them, and some of them I keep up. But that's really what it is.
Okay, so putting the chinuch part of it aside, this is not a chinuch podcast, and also putting the Gemara part of it aside, it's not a Gemara podcast, all of which are tempting. The Chassidus part of it, because what I'm picking up is something interesting. There's 2 parts. I don't want to say 2 parts, but Chassidus has many dimensions to it. And the Friedrich Rebbe actually delineates this clearly in the beginning of Kuntres Teres Chassidus, that there are certain clear agendas, if you will, or components to Chassidus. And one of them is the Das Elokei Avicha, if you want to call it like that. One of them is the learning Haskalah, learning Chassidus, learning about Hashem, learning about Neshama, learning about Seder Shtalshlos, etc. And obviously, within that, to bring it down to not just Maaseh, bring it down to relevance and bring it down to meaningful relevance in every person's life. So yes, when you learn Seder Shtalshlos and you learn about Atzilos, what's the relevance in your life as well? And that's a beautiful discussion for itself. Then there's the Chassidus that talks directly to the person's behavior. In that sense, like Pirkei Avos. In that sense, like Musar Sfarim. With a very different approach, sure. But the way that the Friedrich Rebbe himself says very clearly, I believe in Kotei Deburim, that the whole idea of Chassidus is L'shanis Teva Midosav. And in that sense, so not only going back when you're learning a mimer about Atzilos, about Askola, and you have to know how this helps you become a better person. But isn't a discussion, you said anger management, right? Isn't a discussion about anger management a discussion of Chassidus? Like,
so there's the Nigleh aspect to it.
Sure.
And there's the Chassidus. There's strategy, very basic, down to earth strategies, and then there's the backdrop. It's like kind of like Al-Derech said regarding Lashon Hara. Another Yiddish communities are very, very strong kach in Lashon Hara. So Chassidus approaches that, but we approach it from a much deeper way, right? And it was in the Geras HaKodesh, wherever it discusses the idea how we try to go even on an emotional level and try to work much deeper to try to go and not even think negative about another person, not just be focused on talking. And so there's a very basic bottom line Nigleh strategies which have a space and they're important. And when you're not in that space of feeling a love for somebody because you're just not, and you're not, so there's that basic strategy, a very basic level of what to do, just simply telling them to talk little or talk slow, which are strategies just to be able to go and, then there's the behind, and there's that aspect too. So yes, there is the very Nigleh side when you're talking about, dealing with midas, and then there's the more Chassidus which penetrates deeper. And I think, the reality is that Torah is Nigleh and there's Pnimiyus, and we need both. And I think probably in different situations. And I think I would think sometimes, in the moment, the Nigleh might be sometimes in the moment, but with the Pnimiyus needs to happen in your own time. Mm-hmm. When you've got the quiet, when you're able to just develop yourself into a person, when you're davening, that way when you come out into the world, you are a person which will get less triggered by things, But I think a lot of the Chassidus, because it's much more Pnimiyus approach, often in the moment. It's not necessarily a strategy in the moment, it's much, much more of a Pnimiyus way. But they also need to have strategies in the moment, which is you're actually feeling angry and you're not in a space necessarily to go and think that, it's all coming from the Eibishter, and in that, so you often just the strategy just on a very basic level be able to deal with it, and then on the Pnimiyus level. So I think there's different, but for sure I do very much feel a lot of because I'm dealing with communicating Chassidus, and a large amount of it is to Bachim from different kind of backgrounds, and a lot of them, so it's much more challenging to go through that first side, which is the Stausch, more Hoichin Yonim and Haskal, and bringing it down is more difficult. So when I talk to them directly, I'm much more, talking the bottom lines and, the Parakim of Tanya, which are very, very, very easily and directly talking to a person, Parakim Chavav, Chav Zayin, Chavav, Chav Ches are very much talking to a person. But again, we have this Tanya curriculum goes through the entire Tanya, so they also.
So let's talk about that. Let's hear about this. Very interesting. So
this Tanya curriculum was something which it was my second year now, switching from doing Gemara Le'iyun to Gemara Gersa, and this idea popped into my head to do Tanya Le'Gersa, because I felt like a lot of people learn Tanya and they learn, in yeshiva 8 prakim a year or 6 prakim a year, and it's very, very good, but they don't necessarily know the bigger picture. They don't know. Everyone knows the questions in Parak Aleph of Tanya, but where are those questions answered? Do you know where it is? Do you know? And then there's a lot of Mamorei Chazal or certain themes which come up again and again. And I felt like, even me, when I came in and I was doing Mashpia, do I really know everything here? So my first, year, I had more time at the time. I was a big family, so I had more time. I invested heavily, and I created a curriculum where we basically went through the entire Gan Prokim over the year by night Seder, using Shiur and Mashpia Tanya. So it's like a biur, but it's not too deep. It's and Shiur and Mashpia Tanya is a very strong focus on the flow. Mm-hmm. And after I had the idea, either someone showed me or I ended up seeing, there's a letter of the Rebbe where someone was complaining to the Rebbe about not understanding Tanya, and the Rebbe says it's no different. And obviously, it seemed like it was someone coming from a different community who was very big, maybe Baki and Torah in general, and when he came to Tanya, he was coming in expecting to be able to learn it in a similar way that he was learning Nigleh. And what the Rebbe was saying is, just like when you start learning Chumash and you start with Vayikra and there's a little Aleph, we don't get all stressed about the little Aleph. We have the question and we move on. And if you're a big Talmid Chacham, it'll be very hard for you to reckon, there's a big problem here, but you move on. You realize there's a benefit in moving on. So the Rebbe's arguing regarding Tanya also, you need a Pasha learn it first L'Gersa once, and to know the whole picture before going into Iyun.
To learn the whole Tanya once L'Gersa before?
I might be oversimplifying it, but it's quite clear that if you want to be able to understand it, be Iyun, you need to do it L'Gersa, and that's the way. Right. And if you speak to Maggid Shiur and Nigleh and you speak to them, they'll all tell you the ideal is, you sit with Ma'ayin and the Tosfos, which is quoting a Gemara and Dav Dalad, you haven't even learned Dav Dalad yet. 100%. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And so you're being mefavful based on that. You have to have learned the first 10 blats, which is the general sugya, and then you can, it's in a similar kind of way. I mean, and.
Yeah, it sounds ingenious. It sounds like a no-brainer. You have to know the whole concept. You have to know the whole background before starting to analyze one specific detail.
100%.
But so you managed to do with this curriculum, you do the entire Gan Prakim in 1 year.
In 1 year.
YOEC Mesivta.
Yeah.
And this is their first exposure to Tanya?
No.
So
the year
they've
before,
learned...
they've learned Chavav Tilam Dalet, and maybe Lamed Hey Vav. I don't know how far they get.
You know, so like the classic way of learning in yeshiva, meaning of...
The Prakim, which are very
right.
easily practical.
Right.
Chav test is interesting, but how it's practical. But yeah, and so this is, and what depends on the year. This works really best for the top third. The lower chevra, they get it in generally, but you need to move that speed and get generally. You need to be pretty ready in Chassidus in a decent way.
Right.
But I've sat down with my first year, which was I prepared also, so my head was like fully into it. I remember sitting down Shavuos, so it was like ready almost the end of the year, and I sat with a few bachim around my Yom Tov table, and I started going and asking questions. Whereas this Ma'amar Chazal, is that Ma'amar Chazal? Where's the Alter asked a question? And I said, again, plus or minus one parak, but they knew where things were. They're stronger, they knew where things were. There's a big value.
Wow,
and then they go and learn chitas every day. Here's the thing. You learn chitas every day. People don't think where we're coming from, where we're going to.
Right.
But when you already have the big picture once, you have the whole map. So as you're going along now, you've got an awareness of where I am, where I'm going. Bacham told me the transformation when they started Yutas Kislev, learning Tanya. Right, and by Yutas Kislev, we're ready in our program, we're ready to parak Yud Chas or Chaf, right, whatever it is, and maybe Yud Chas, whatever, and so they're coming in. And it slowly catches up by the time they end, because I think it finishes on Shavuos, but it ends up basically meeting. But the point is that the first chitas they do is different.
Right.
This isn't
like a chazara. It's a chazara because they're holding a ches, which is already the second track of Tanya, and now they're like starting a chazara on the first track.
Exactly.
Wow.
So that's been something which, when it works well, again, like everything, I have worksheets, and some people focus too much on the worksheets. It's got its chesronos, it's got like any issue but the people which you can train to do it properly. And there's always a few every year, and some years it's a bigger group of 15 or 10, 20, some years it's a smaller group of 5, 6. But the people that do it fully all learn it's for me it was transformation. I'd never done it before like that.
Right.
I'd learned chitas, I'd learned Tanya and I'd learned, but for me it was transformational. My whole relationship with the whole, and I came to a point when I was learning Likutei Sichos, and it says like Mavur B'Tanya, I would like, before looking at the bottom, I'd say, where is that?
Right.
And there's something very, very rewarding about that.
Sure.
And the confidence it gives to Bachram, which...
Sure. If you think about it in terms of like, we know that Tanya is Tersh B'Chsav Chassidus, the same way that you want to have this basic exposure to Chumash, where like, where's the story of Yaakov, or where's the Aseret Dibros, or something like that. You want to be able to say, where in Tanya does it discuss a certain topic?
Sure. Chumash had the same problem. And I asked, sometimes I sat, I'm like, does anybody know where the second time it says, Aseret Dibros? Some Bachram, unfortunately, again, depending on the background, we're dealing with very... Our yeshiva is very special. We've got like the full spectrum all together, and there's something very nice about that. But some of these have, unfortunately. But Chumash also needs the same thing, but Chumash is massive.
Well, let's stick to Tanya.
Yeah.
What do you feel Bachram connect to most on a relevant, which part do you see, especially when they see the bigger picture? Because I agree, there's something extremely powerful in seeing the bigger picture, because in terms of, not just in terms of Askala, not just in terms of knowing the information better, also in terms of avodah, of connecting to Tanya. I think that, you could only really connect to the ideas of Tanya where you know where it's taking you. I'm thinking like, let's say you're in the beginning of Tanya and you're learning about Nefesh Habehamis and the Seichel and the Midas, right? And you know it very well, but if you don't know why we're talking about Seichel and Midas, and if you don't know about the bigger picture of the Beinani and his struggles and the guidelines of the Beinani, then even if you know it very well on a Seichel level, and you could explain Seichel and Midas and the process and the difference and all that, what does it mean to me, right? Let's talk about it within the framework of Tanya and the Beinani. So I do believe that probably when you know the bigger picture, not only do you appreciate the Askala of it more, you appreciate the relevance of it more. Do you feel that? Do you see that? Do you see that Bachram are connected? Especially like you said, I think this may be a perfect example. You said that they're learning in Sherbeis, they're learning the Chavav Prakim, which talk about the negative feelings, which is straight up avodah. And then when they see the bigger picture, do you hear feedback from Bachram that like, wow, I connect to this more, I feel its relevance more? Now, obviously, on a simple level, they're a year older and they're having another chazara, so that's a virtue of itself. Right. But maybe also by seeing the bigger picture, have you experienced that Bachram are able to feel the relevance more?
So that's a good question. So first of all, generally, you don't get much feedback.
Yeah, of course.
So the ones which benefit most again, this is a thing where like even just the chaver which haven't got the same strengths are able to just grow because they get large amount of yediyas even if they're not connecting all the dots. But the chaver which really do, meaning there's a building blocks here. The first 8 prakim are pasha building blocks, and then we begin Perek Test, which is like the battle.
Right.
So again, it's hard for me to know whether they've given me feedback. I know for me what it's done, and I have some bachim which come in which are very, very developed, and I can see that there's and they talk to me a year or two later. They're coming in Zal, they're coming back to me to talk about Tanya. There's obviously some kind of connection. They associate, they connect the dots.
100%.
So
yeah,
I don't know.
You've been doing this for 8 years.
Yeah, doing the Tanya thing.
So that's where the feedback comes in. Because exactly. As a teacher, we all know we don't get feedback on the spot.
No.
But it's down the line we can get the feedback.
Yes, I've had bachim which told me that Chitas was transformed. And I have bachim which have gone in Zal. A bachim thinking of right now, who went very much be'iyun into Tanya, and what really equipped him was that he's. And he comes to me talking about, I'm very impressed. Like you see the chat thing,
right?
Because you see something like Prachim Chavochos and Chavochos teach. They're very, very, very deeply based upon what a Beinoni is, which is empirically based. They're very, very, very deeply connected. And I've even spoken to other Maggid Shiur which are teaching certain Prachim, we're talking certain ideas. I'm like, in that parak, and it's important to really have, the big picture. So again, I don't know whether, and you also got to remember, Shigim Bachim aren't that old.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So it's hard for me to know how much they're aware and how much they're not aware.
Sure. By the way, again, it's not a chinuch podcast. It's not about how to teach it to Mesivta Bachim or to others. I think you started saying something about that you yourself. Like, it's an ability for us. Mashpiim are. Chassidus is their bread and butter. Chassidus is what they're learning and busy with. It's their passion and their excitement. It's not even about how they therefore give it over versus how they therefore live it for themselves. Mm-hmm. And when they live for themselves, then they're able to give it over.
Comes through.
Right.
That's really the hard part.
Why? What do you mean?
That demands us to sit and actually work on ourselves despite our really busy lives. Like we're busy preparing, but are we busy really preparing? Are we preparing ourselves as people? And that's much, much more difficult.
It's more difficult. It's not going to happen if your job is anything else. Or, I'm not saying it's not going to happen, but you're in a much better opportunity because you're getting paid to prepare to learn Chassidus.
And but that takes away a little bit.
Because you're getting paid?
Not because they're getting paid. In other words, the fact that you having to prepare a shiur for a shiur, and there's something powerful. When I learn Chassidus on my own, I feel no pressure to cover any amount of material, to think about how I'm going to say anything. Mm-hmm. Just sit and I learn an ois of a maimer, and I pause and I just think about it a little bit, and like it says, I think the Friedrich Rebbe uses this language, to be misakev on the Chassidus, just to slow down, to hold, sit. When you're preparing, it's very hard to do that.
Right.
Because first of all, you've normally got 45 minutes, or 30 minutes, or 20, depending something happens at home. You're very
45 seconds.
It's very small, very short, and you're relying a lot on what you've got inside, and should, because the reason why,
that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, but at the same time, though, there's something geschmack about being able to just, that's why we really need to learn Chassidus ourselves.
Right.
Very, very importantly. Regarding Tanya, but I would think, and this is actually a dream in a certain way of mine, it would be really cool if we could, there's a lot of now courses coming along on this and that for adults. I feel like if this, you could have a whole system set up, but it would be a cool idea if we could go and make that for adults. They would go through a system of learning Tanya Gersa, and it would be a thing where this is a project. People go and they do in their own time this or that, and this project. There should be project Tanya. That's why I call it project Tanya, which means you do Gan Prokim and you learn and you know the flow. You do it over the year. I can't remember, one of the Rebbeim had this thing where they would actually go and learn Gan Prokim over the year, a parak a week. It's such a seder. Because
really?
Yeah.
I've seen this. Wow.
I've not seen it inside, but I remember a certain individual who told me this 15 years ago, and he used to do it. And you could see he could do a parak a week.
Which means exactly a year, right?
Yeah, and it's not crazy. It's enough time to learn a parak and make that be your thing that week. You give half an hour a day, think even. I'm giving Bacham 2 hours a parak and then a chazar at the end. But if you give someone just half an hour a day,
right. And it's only one time in their life. If you do more times to do this, right?
I feel like maybe it's because I think they say youth is wasted on the young, right? So they have all the time, but I feel like, this is such a deep and powerful thing that it would be most to be appreciated by, I think it's important because they need it for when they go to Zah, but it would be appreciated even more by older people, which, but...
So so imagine you were, I mean, this is great, and, maybe a listener will be inspired to either do this for themselves or kickstart this project, But imagine you were pitching this. Maybe you're pitching this right now. Imagine you were pitching this idea. What would be the consumer's reason to want to learn Tanya in that kind of way? In other words, we're talking to someone who learns Chassidus, who does Chitas, who learned Tanya in Yeshiva, maybe even goes to Shir Tanya here or there, Be'iyun maybe even, which is everything not what this is. What's the quality of having this kind of ownership over Tanya? And I'll already challenge you, and if the answer is just to have it more academically, which is beautiful itself, to have more of a control, a grasp over Tanya, which doesn't need justification, or is there something? I'm pushing it back to: is there something where all of a sudden you'll be able to relate to the concepts of Tanya in a more real way?
Yeah, I mean,
how would you pitch that?
If you don't see the bigger picture, you said this before yourself, if you don't see the bigger picture, you don't see the context of where certain ideas are. And this is not just academic, but if you want to internalize anything, right, there's a broad view here that the Alter Rebbe is presenting, especially also the second half of Tanya, which, by the way, is even less known by most people. Right. It's more difficult, and the longer the style clearly changes. But the bigger picture, right? You have to get the bigger outlook and the way how Diab Tachtoinim weaves in, and there's Kavon, and there's Mais, and there's Ava, and Rotz Vishum, and Perik Nun, and there's and Perik Memzan. I feel like when you can only really internalize something in a real way when like this small idea which you want to internalize is part of a broader picture. I mean, to me, it's obvious that an idea can only really properly be internalized when you are seeing it the way it was given and the bigger picture of the entire thing. It's called Perik Aleph, Perik Beis, Perik Gimel for a reason. It's not like a year of Mamon, which even there, by the way, often there's even with not official there's certain. It's a sefer of Tanya, and it's Perik Aleph through Perik Nun Gimel, and there's clearly one bigger thing being given over and.
Right. It's not different Mamorim.
No,
it's one sefer with 53 projects. 100%. Yeah, exactly.
So I think Bichlal, I'll say one thing is that you're talking here really about Das. Is that I think even if you're going to do this, and I've done it, and I do it every year now with the Bachram, but no matter how much you're going to learn, and how well you're going to learn, and you'll feel by the way more confidence. That's a big thing, by the way. You feel more of a confidence in Tanya. Sometimes when we go and do things, we kind of feel like we haven't got the big picture. You feel having a bigger picture, Tanya, gives us certain confidence, which is Bechlal a good thing. But and also Bechlal, in order to Bechlal have any das, you have to have a good understanding of what you're talking about. But I'm saying Bechlal, with all of the learning, there needs to be this second thing, which is that the Weinstein idea of das is that our emotion is the way how we experience the world that we live in, and that's why for Nefesh Habehamis things, you don't need to think anything because the Nefesh Habehamis experiences things in the obvious way. That's what Nefesh Habehamis is, and that's Nefesh Habehamis in the heart, and the heart is what's experiencing the world. That's why I understand emotion, and you don't need any bechachmas. You experience the world. The Nefesh Habehamis dwells in the moyach because what we need to do is we need to basically go. We need to rise above ourselves. That's what we really need to be doing. And what seichel really means is leaving our experience and going into a certain space of leaving what we're comfortable with, leaving our environment and the way we're seeing the world, and rising up to some other perspective, which is important, and that's why we Nefesh Habehamis. It's about Avodas Hashem, and that's really important. But what's important over here is that afterwards we need to go and bridge that back down because you don't feel and experience a reality which is outside. And therefore, no matter how much we're going to learn, we're not going to be able to go and we're not going to be able to fully internalize it. So. I would argue that no matter how much, and you can argue about the values of such a system, but you need to have step two. It might be easy to do step two, and you've got the bigger picture, but you need step two.
So I think this is actually exactly the point of what I'm trying to see here. So you have this idea of Tanya, right? You learn Tanya, you're or anything next to this, and you're experiencing it on your brain level, and it's very geschmack, and you're getting it, and you could repeat it, and you're getting tested on it. And then you're moving on in your day, and you're moving on in your life back to your, like you said, and it's a great way to say it, Nefesh Habehamis, your natural experiences. And now the question is, knowing the Chassidus and having it affect your actual life, right? So you're saying obviously that requires personal avodah.
That which means just really, really. And again, I think this is why maybe in our generation we struggle with this most, is because we live in an environment which is really a very distracted environment. And das, if you look, Paragimol is yitka machshavte b'chozek. I think that's the word it uses, which just means to rivet your attention. Like, the word yitka, like Noshan, when it says he set up his tent, same word yitka, means to have a rivet, to peg your mind into something. That's your whole world in this moment. And with me, I struggle. I mean, I go and I bring with Bachram and B'shas myself, I feel really connected to what I'm saying. And then the next day I wake up and it's a struggle. I mean, it's a really, really, really big struggle. I mean, it's a hard thing. Sometimes we feel like we're living in two worlds because we feel entirely different about things, different times. And I think that ultimately, if as Lubavitchers we was going to go now and spend time putting real effort into something to guide people, I would think das should be the thing which we need to be talking about. And I understand that might be the goal of what you're trying to do in this podcast even, is das, because, there's so many people, such brilliant people and brilliant communicators and talented people. And still, a lot of us still feel a certain gap.
Yeah. One of the names that I had in mind, like one of the ideas for a name for this podcast, was the Das Diaries.
Right.
Yeah. So, exactly. And that's why I'm sticking on this, because when you deal with Bachrim, I don't mean Bachrim like that age. When you're teaching Chassidus to people, so it's not an idea anymore. Mm-hmm. You want them to buy into what you're saying, so it has to be real. It has to be relevant. Right. That's the word. It has to be. I'm going to keep on saying relevant. It has to be relevant. Can you give me an example of give me a topic in Chassidus and Tanya? Give me a topic in Tanya that you feel, just from your experience, like that you see in your students or you see by yourself, that moment of the das clicking, right, because it was explained in a certain way.
So I'm not sure if this is like the literal expression of what das means when we talk about das.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there is this thing like verbringen. What we're really doing is we're talking about this ideas in a way which seems very much like das. I'm not sure if that's really das in the technical term of what it is. And to me, my argument might be that the fact that doesn't feel like it, but still, it has an effect for sure. But again, there is a way how we can communicate ideas in a way which seems to be similar to das, in the fact that the ideas are relating to this world around us that we live in.
Right.
So one thing for me, and I felt this as a bacher, is that, the Perek Chav Ches, the Shtei Nefashos. I say Shtei Nefashos regarding Chav Ches because I feel like that's probably where it's brought out the strongest, is regarding davening, but it's Bechlal. But there's this idea where we basically tell you that the good that you do and the deep connection that you have during davening is not discounted because of the Machshav Zara that you have. And that it's not real, it's not lacking in how real it is because of the Machshav Zara. And again, I think, if my understanding, this idea applies far out of davening. I think davening is maybe, where where Chassidus talks about like you're facing Nefesh Habehamis in a very, very strong way. So you it's like the most intense way where we experience it. But in our life, we have this thing, and we feel sometimes like very, very, very connected with what we're doing at a certain time, and then the next moment or very shortly afterwards, we feel the opposite. And that, to be able to talk about that in real terms of like, and I remember once, and again, you remember what has an impact on you once when I was, in Yeshiva, we had an Elter Bach who was bringing with us, and I was on Shabbos, and then I was like working hard on davening, and we're in LA, and the moment you're davening, and then as I walked out into the street, you go into the dining room, and you could see someone walk by, and it shatters your purity. It shatters and again, I won't know this, but on a real, let's talk on an emotional level, I've worked to myself, and I'm trying to really see the world in a bigger picture. And in one moment, the world's not like what you think it is. Mashpia always say you go to breakfast. I think that's just kind of trying to downplay it. And I personally feel like we really need to talk to people with Because some people, there's euphemisms, but I feel like you can talk delicately about the real struggles people have, but in more of a delicate way without like being...
Sure.
So like for me, it's not bread. I would use example, like, I speak to Bach, we live in LA. I mean, in LA, today's very hard because you walk in the street, you are... what's the word I'm looking for?
Bombarded.
You're bombarded. That's what you are. And it's the place of Hollywood, it's the place of where they're trying to grab your attention. So like you're bombarded, like you literally, and you're coming in and you're standing, you've got what you've got, and you're being bombarded. So but the point is that I remember then that afternoon, and Mashpia sat down with, and he was saying, when you sit for 3 minutes and you're thinking about the Eibishter for those 3 minutes, that is emes la'amita and chai la'ol me'olamim. It says in Tanya. Something very powerful about that, and then you go and you realize that within me I've got two parts, two entire complete parts, right? And the way it says in Tanya that it's not just one me which is noted this way and that way, and therefore, if I'm being pulled towards things which aren't good, that's a raya that I'm not properly involved. My davening wasn't right. No, it's actually a battle going on. It's two separate beings. It's like a guy who's trying to come and disturb. So when you bring these down, it's very, very, very practical. You know what that's able to do? That's able to give you some sanity. Really, to give you some sanity. If we wouldn't be able, and again, I don't know how people without, Chassidus Chabad, and they might have other oisius, which is basically saying the same idea without using our language, but to me, that gives me sanity. I'm on my way here, I'm sitting on the plane, and there's like distractions going around, and I'm also trying to write a Panther Rebbe, and there's something so vulnerable about it, like, it kind of hits really, really deep. Like, who am I? What am I? And but then you're able to say, wait a second, I know, like, I've got these two things, and I know what I identify with it, and there's two things, and it just creates a certain be able to live with peace and with calm, and not get so overwhelmed by the other side coming. And I'll give another example, more Binan Chavera, and if I remember my Bachim about this, it's quite honest. And again, one of like when I remember Bachim, I want them to get the feeling like I'm in the trenches with them. Like, again, I'm delicate, I'm Mashpia, I've got to do things in a delicate way. But like, so in Binodim Lechaveri, I was speaking to them, how sometimes I have friends and, we're close friends, and sometimes I feel jealousy of them. And, if we're really, really honest, unfortunately, a lot of the politics that's going on in the world is due to jealousy, bottom line. Or money, whatever it is, but it's some form of my being threatened by something else. We're all, tachlis, we'll talk, it's more maybe Nefesh Habehamis, but we're all, as humans, we just kind of want to feel that we're meaningful, like we have purpose and we've got value. And everyone's trying to find that way. And when we're doing that, and who are we? I care about helping a bacha, helping a yid come and realize a neshama. But then at the same time, really honest, what happens is we go and we find that these midas come up, and like, my good friend, we both care about the same things, or normally feel jealous of people doing similar things to you, and you feel jealous. And there's something about it which seems like so wrong, and like, wait a second, if you're really about, the Chassidus that you're teaching, and you're really about the Eibishter, how could you? The model I take, and I speak to Bach, and I think with myself is, no, it's fine. Like, give it a bit of space, like, let it be. Not in a way whereby I'm going to run with it, not in a way that I'm taking it serious, but recognize this is another voice. Recognize there's another voice. And there's nothing wrong with that, and that's to be expected. Part of what Tanya does, is it creates a realistic expectation. I remember I was going to Rabbi Shapiro in LA, and I was like talking to him about how I want the Eibishter, and I was like, but still I'm like, all these things are bombarding me, and he said like, welcome to Olam Haza. And he was telling me this is Tanya, and I'd learned Tanya, but there was something about how he said it, like that, what that. It's like, yeah. Like Tanya is creating a really realistic expectation that you are going to have. Now you don't allow it to fester. And I was with my friend regarding jealousy, is that I go and we know we're really good friends. He knows I've got Nefesh Habehamis, I know he's got Nefesh Habehamis. We're honest. So I come and I be honest. I have certain feelings of jealousy, and when I actually even talk it out, the whole thing deflates because it grows when we like. And it's like, I've got Nefesh Habehamis, like everything. Sometimes I'm like, I have a Nefesh Habehamis, you've got Nefesh Habehamis, we've all got Nefesh Habehamis, and let's go and conquer the world.
Right.
Something about it which is just so calming, and like I've always felt, and again I don't know, everyone's different personalities are very passionate. I've always felt like I'm very much strongly a struggler, and I struggled so much. Like who am I? And who am I? But there's just some peace you can go and you can just understand that this is just going to be a part of our life. Some people might say it's discouraging. To me, it's encouraging. It's like, there's something very, very powerful about not misleading people with expectations that aren't real.
Okay.
And, when we talk about and a lot of, I remember once hearing somebody say, and he was talking about other kids, sometimes they talk about these very high levels, and they talk about, you're learning with the Svarim, and it's like, something about it is really inspiring, because being able to be in that level is really, really good, but then you're bombarded with the reality that's not your reality. So it ends up becoming not relevant. What does Tanya come say? Tanya says, listen, I'm not cutting any corners. Kedusha and Klippa, there's no grey area. Kedusha is Klippa. Tanya is very strong demands.
Right.
Really.
Right.
You can't fool yourself. But on the other hand, it's extreme. But on the other hand, it's also telling you, your expectations, I'll give you expectations. So unless you become a tzaddik, you want the lucky few, you are going to have this side of you. Come to terms with it.
Right.
Allow it.
Exactly.
To me, this saved me. And again, there's more regarding this. We can develop this a little bit more.
Right.
But this saved me. Just this aspect of giving Nefesh Habehamis a space that is going to try to pull me away, and don't let that make me lose my sense of identity, who I am.
Right. So I want to develop exactly that, the identity of the Nefesh Habehamis, because let's say Perek Chav Ches, right? So we're telling you that you have two nefashos, right? Or let's say what you just said about, a yid could feel like, what's going on? I want alikos and then I have taivas. So in a way, this is a lot more basic. In a way, that's the whole vart of Tanya, of it's not Yetzer Tov and Yetzer Hara, which you can find in Sifrei Musar and really in Shulchan Aruch. It's Nefesh Alikis and Nefesh Habehamis. In other words, a lot more about your identity. So now, if we say that, so there's one track which is for sure familiar in Chassidus, especially in the Rebbe's Torah, where the identity of the Yid is his Nefesh Alikis. But we're not tzaddikim. And in the world of Tanya, the identity of the Beinani, and certainly of the Rasha,
says it clearly.
Yeah, exactly. He Adam Atzmai, right? That the person's identity is the Nefesh Habehamis. So 1 second. So if my identity is the Nefesh Habehamis, right? Why? What's the power that I have? In other words, why do I want to identify as the Nefesh Habehamis?
So why would I want to identify as Nefesh Habehamis?
Why would I want to identify as Nefesh Habehamis? In other words, like, there is this track in Chassidus where, no, don't worry, because even if you have a taiva, that's not real you. The Rebbe is the high leveraged Rambam, the Yetzer Hu Shetokfai. A Yid really wants to do mitzvahs. In other words, and if you want to borrow those words, the Yid's real identity is a Nefesh Habehamis. And I'm not coming to be metavich, that's stira. I'm not, that's not discuss, unless you really want to turn this into a shir.
Let's talk avodah to address that.
Exactly. Let's go, forget the text, and forget the nuances of the words. Let's talk about the concept of how a person, a regular yid, a beinani, right, a halavai beinani, is trying to go through his day, and he has the identity of the Nefesh Habehamis. He knows that every time he does a mitzvah, this is the yichud nitzchi le'lemvad, like you mentioned before, and this is really who you are. And then when you counter a taiva, like you said, to let it be, to be okay with it, because you know that this is also who you are. This is your identity. So what's the power of? It's true, so we're not going to whitewash it. That's not my question. Why would we say that? We're saying it because it's true. What's the inherent value of knowing that we are the Nefesh Habehamis?
Okay. Yeah. So first, in one line, I'll say is the Nefesh Habehamis being our identity is an inescapable reality.
Sure.
The Nefesh Habehamis being our identity is the truest reality that we strive for. And to me, I'll quote. So here's another thing. So this was like, for me as a bacher, this was transformation. I was like 19 and I was trying to figure out who I was. And there was, there's more I can bring, but let me just bring one marshal of the Rebbe, which Rebbe brings different times with different emphasis. But to me, this is like one of the Mashalim which talks to me very, very deeply. There's the marshal which the Rebbe gives of Chassidim traveling to the Rebbe. And you probably know the marshal, but there's different emphasis. It's Chassidim traveling to the Rebbe, and in order for them to go to the Rebbe, what they need to do is they live far away. They can't walk there. So they go to the wagon driver. They pay him money, and then the wagon driver goes to the animal and whispers into his ear, in different versions of the story, and says, when we get to Lubavitch, we're going to give you a big, big stack of hay. And what is, they're going to Lubavitch. In the back of the wagon, the Chassidim are talking about Avodas Hashem and the Rebbe, and then the wagon driver is thinking about money, and the animal's thinking about hay. One way of saying it, and we'll speak two sides, is, and we'll break it down more, is even though the animal's thinking about hay, the Chassidim, which are the whole reason why it's happening, are thinking about the Eibishter. Flip side is, the Chassidim, with all the think about the Eibishter, wouldn't be able to get there without the animal thinking about hay.
Right.
So about this. the reality we need to become to terms with is our Nefesh Habehamis is our most external self, and for a reason. That's the end of Tanya. Second half of Tanya, Lamed Hey, Lamed Vav, the Nefesh Chiyunis, that's Dir B'Tachtonim.
Right.
It's not by chance, and especially now in Dir B'Tachtonim, you never built this up even stronger, because this is the final moment, and I feel like maybe the world's even changed that direction. Nefesh Habehamis has become even more central with the whole mental health movement, because we're going in that direction. We can get to move more soon, but
sure.
The point is that this is our most conscious outer self, our personality, the way we feel about life, the way we live in this world, right? The way you know me and I know you as personalities. That's Nefesh Habehamis. That's what it really is. And that's, I call that motivation. That's what's going to make you do anything. And we need to go and find a way to get our Nefesh Habehamis on board. Because the Nefesh is going to get us there.
Right.
So with Nefesh Kiss, which is the real intent behind, is about the Eibishter. But to actually get it, it needs to go and almost trick Nefesh Habehamis in.
Right. So let's clarify. We're not talking about the Yetzer Hara. We're not talking about Averis.
Yeah, I'm
not
not
talking about the Nefesh Habehamis.
Let me switch here. Which was Nefesh Habehamis before I was talking about doing Nefesh Habehamis, about how it throws to you Dvarim Hasurim maybe. Right. Machshavos Zoris, which bring, and it's technically even Machshavos Zoris, but for sure Machshavos Zoris. Here I'm going now and switching a little bit more about it.
Right. Let's clarify
address that, because the other thing is knowing your identity to just come to terms with it. But here I'm going saying not just that, to make you do everything good that you do, you need to have a proper understanding. Like I have this thing that, and the Friedrich apparently uses this language, if I remember, I think I've seen it quoted, like you have to know your Nefesh Habehamis, which might mean like where is it going to get you? But again, the way I understand it also is not where is it going to pull you away, you also have to know your Nefesh Habehamis how to get it in.
Right.
And there's a certain to bring out this idea stronger, there's a certain steering in Amar Chazal that in one place it says L'olam yasek b'toyer shlei lishma b'toyer shlei shavah lishma, and the language, and again I heard this from Mashpia, the Rebbe apparently is medayik L'olam. It doesn't just say if you've got shlei lishma it's okay because at least you're doing the right thing, and b'toyer shlei shavah lishma, and says explanations, we'll get to that, but it's L'olam, which sounds like seek it out, look for it. Yeah,
there's a value in shlei lishma
because it's going to get you there.
Right.
But then when you do that, you're like, am I real? Am I really serving the Eibishter? I said to myself, what's going on over here?
Right.
There's another Ma'amar Chazal which says, Al tiyu kavadin meshamish nesrav amnas the kappa pras. You've got in one place saying la'olam, and then saying al tiyu. Now again, I think the simple answer you might say is one's most Chassidus, but for some reason I think the Rebbe doesn't rejects that. And what is the word? Because I heard this from the Rosh actually. I've never seen it said. But he says, Al tiyu kavada means your etzem avdus to the Eibishter cannot be for any reason. You avdus, why am I in this world? What is my purpose? Who am I here for? Is for the Eibishter. You can't have the reason why you're in this world is not for yourself. Bottom line, it's an avdos. But then in the mechanism to get on board and to make it happen is l'olam shlei lishma. And that's when we say toich shlei lishma. Toich shlei lishma isn't just a thing really, really, really want to do the right thing. It's a more powerful thing. It's like the real motivation behind the external motivation is the Chassidim that want to travel to the Rebbe because they don't want Chassidus, they want a Rebbe. The mechanism they'll do is they'll use your Nefesh Habehamis and they'll find a way in. That's how they'll do it. That's the way in. That's why I think it's so important for us to be realistic. Especially, again, if you just bring back the chinuch for a moment, we need to be able to bring people on board. And to bring people on board, we need to build them up. I've felt a little bit, when I was younger, I went to a literature school for a good few years. So I saw both sides, and I felt, this is my heritage, I felt in the literature schools there was way too much emphasis in Shaloi Lishma. And maybe in the Lubavitch, because we're especially Mesivtas, a lot of talk about Lishma. And that's great. And we need to talk that. They had some abs. But we also need to realize that we're dealing with people and we want them to be sustained, involved, and we need to motivate them. And you and I know, as Mechanchim, we need to give a person a good word. We need to make a bacha feel like, Rabbi Wagner, Rabbi Klein like me. They see me at my strength. They see me for I am. The people I listen to best were the people that I felt they like me. And that's why my job in Chiluk is to try to make people feel like they know that I like them. I see them, I know that I like them. I see the Nefesh Habehamis, and I kind of give little treats to the Nefesh Habehamis. Not external, we're not giving candy because we're not the young, and when they're young. But when they're older, build them up, make them feel, I can say, there's a bit of Yashus comes in. When we've kind of got them to a certain place, they know enough Chassidus involved enough through the Nefesh Habehamis, we can slowly, and also, that's also regarding the whole idea of L'olam, right? Right. What are they learning about Tachlis? The Yashus might lead them to want to go the whole Sefer L'Kut in one go, and they will. Let's be honest, why is someone doing the whole thing, Halikut, whatever it is, right? Yeah. Because there's some Nefesh Habehamis calling. But the Moshe boys can talk to them, and they're gonna. It's going to. But we need be running the simultaneous thing of, on the one hand, talking emes k'meishahu, and maybe by verbrengens that should be, again, people might argue when it should be which. Some people argue even by the way that, the way the Rebbe spoke to people, the way the Rebbe spoke to verbrengens, the way the Rebbe spoke to people one-on-one and Igros, you can tell there's a little bit of a difference, The way I feel maybe a little bit more is you hear a lot of stories, Chassidus. The Rebbe gave a lot of room to Nefesh Habehamis, and the Rebbe wasn't pushy on people even to what to do, what not to do. And the Rebbe gave space.
Right.
Because I think people need to be able to choose.
Can you give an example of that? What do you mean, Rebbe?
I don't know. I've read a lot of my encounters, my stories, where the Rebbe, people talk a lot, how the Rebbe told them exactly what he wanted them to do. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't in a way whereby he took away their choice. Right. It was in a way whereby he wanted them. Now, again, that could be true with Bechir, but the way I feel, and again, I might be wrong, it's just my haragosh, is that also people need the Nefesh Habehamis to kabayin, and they need to kind of come to call in themselves. I had recently a bacha who's an old Talmud of mine. He's already in Shib Beizal, and I knew that he was mesupik whether to come here or to go somewhere else, and he's trying to find himself. And someone walked down the whole way, and I tried to keep up with my old guys. I was speaking to him. I was like, "How are you? So you're back in your shiva?" I tell him. He's like, "Yeah, because it's the right place. It's good for me." And he started telling me all thing. Just in one comment, I said to him, I feel like that's not your own voice. I feel like that's somebody else's voice. Mm. And 3 days later, he comes to me and said, "I want to talk to you." We only got together like a month or two later, and he told me, first of all, that me saying that to him felt like I was seeing him. Talking about seeing him. When I say him, I mean the Pasha Nefesh Habehamis. And it basically came to the point where he realized that his decision to come to yeshiva had largely been, this yeshiva and continue on, had largely been due to pressure from other people. And because he's told and he knows he's brought my house, so he respects authority, people know better, it was in a way whereby it wasn't like he heard them and he tried to internalize what they said, and even if maybe he didn't fully feel it, but he chose it because he recognized the value. Maybe like Kabbalah's all as in the Kabbalah part of it, like to choose. It felt almost like he had deferred his decision and relied on, some people unfortunately feel like with the Mashpia, maybe they go to Mashpia and it's in a way whereby they're not working with the Mashpia to come. They're kind of just, sometimes it's easy to just defer your decision and to say, whatever you say, Rabbi. And when people do that, when Bachman did, whatever you say, something doesn't talk to me. And I was trying to really encourage him to and he was very, very unhappy in yeshiva because he wasn't there really. He's not there. And I'm trying to help him, you need to come here for your own self and to choose and to look and to open, to discover Yiddishkeit and buy in yourself. It was entirely not his own. Mm-hmm. So that's my point. I feel like there needs to be a little bit of room given, and I feel for the long term, we want to build people up. We need to find a way of giving people, and that's why, when sometimes Bacham come to me and tell me, I don't want to learn, my immediate impulse as a teacher is to shut them down. What do you mean? You come here, waste time, do nothing. But when you actually give them a little bit of a moment, you don't want to learn. I remember once Bacha came to me, gave me a whole speech, and I sat down with him, had a bit of time. It was the last day of Yeshiva before Pesach, gave him a bit of time. And he explained to me fully why he didn't want to learn, and I understood him. I didn't think it was the right thing for him to do, but I understood why he felt he didn't want to learn. And it was the right time. I had quiet, basement gone. I sat with him 10 minutes. And at the end, the guy said, I actually really get you, and I understand. I said, there'll be a pity here for 2 hours ago, It'll be a pity not to learn. And at the end of it, he came up to me and said, I ended up learning really, really well. Not everything works it's a nice story to highlight.
Yeah, exactly.
But there was something about that where when you do that, you're giving him a little bit of a voice. I'm showing him that I actually trust you. In other words, you can have your opinion that you don't want to, and I understand that. And if we're really honest, sometimes we also don't want to. But there's a saying where we can choose to do the right thing in a certain way, and that's what really Kabbalah Soul means. Kabbalah Soul means not I force him, right, but I give him a moment to be, to experience what he's experiencing, and try to encourage him to make the right choice, pay him to choose. But when he's chosen, even if the choice is a Kabbalah's own choice, which is as far as I'm concerned, I'd just much rather not. But I've empowered him, you are a person who can have the power to choose. I'm not just like Zohar kind of thing, like you learn the Zohar, the words are going to enliven you. I know you don't want to learn, just listen to me. And the very fact that you're going to a Moshe and Maggid Shiur, which is probably truth, but even if I force them, the Torah doesn't think. But we want B'chal Levav B'chal, we want to have him be more present, his Nefesh Habehamis more present. I felt giving a little bit of space and allowing him to choose. And I think talking about chinuch being in the long term, and we're trying to go into it, is about giving people time for them to step in and them to buy in themselves. And I felt sometimes that we, again, this is a bit of chinuch, but it also ties, but you're going to giving space in Nefesh Habehamis, is we just need to give sometimes, although it's really hard as a teacher, to give a little bit of room for people to have that little bit of rebellion, a little bit of, cause when you're doing that, you're allowing them to show up. And then you can try to guide them as they're showing up.
Right.
Make a kabbalah or a choice. Choose for the Eibishter to do, because it's a mitzvah. And that talks to Nefesh Habehamis also, but also it talks to Nefesh, because there's some way how that when you allow people to go and to choose to do something because it's MS, it's really Nefesh Kiss, because like, why would it do that? But there's also, it's talking to Nefesh Habehamis. You're empowering them to say, I can really want the other way, but I can choose. I feel that to me, and this is something I've developed, especially in the more recent years, there's something very, very, very powerful about just, and people have their personality and who they are, and if we want people to be part, we need to allow them to show up with who they are in Nefesh Habehamis. Right. And find ways to buy in Nefesh Habehamis.
So let's take that exact discussion, which is about for a bacher or for someone else. Mm-hmm. Let's translate that into ourselves. Yeah. Let's talk as if we're the same conversation. Yeah. Allowing the bacher to be heard, allowing the bacher to be seen, giving even allowing the bacher to say, "I don't want to learn," stuff like that, which is very powerful in chinuch. But
see, but how can it be in ourselves?
So let's now translate that into our own Nefesh Habehamis, right? Mm-hmm. Let's talk about the chinuch of the Nefesh Habehamis. In other words, let's use those expressions of Chassidus. Well, you're saying it in the chinuch world.
Yeah, but it's
let's talk about it for ourselves. Yeah, I know it's the same.
It sounds like the same. So maybe, again, I don't want to be dishonest, because the word Decher B'shtei Yadayim in Tanya is very, very strong terms. Let me just say this is how I feel it. Again, I'm saying with all the humility, I want to be careful here.
Yeah, it's a big...
But there's something I feel like, I gave you the example of the jealousy there. What I did, and maybe this is what Decher B'shtei Yadayim means, I don't know. What I did is I didn't get stressed about the fact that it was there, which would be shutting myself down and not allowing, which sometimes in a certain way that feels like, it makes me very mekuvatz. There's something great about being able to go and say, it's here, but it's not me. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, it makes sense. I've got Nefesh Habehamis. I'm going to feel jealous of a friend. I am trying to be a good teacher. I want to feel like I'm a good teacher, and I have another friend who's in certain ways doing things really, really well. And I actually admire it. But also, like, because of my own Nefesh Habehamis, ego, insecurity, whatever it is, it's delicate. But in a certain way, it's about, like, just not freaking out about it. It's just giving a moment of space. It's Decher B'shtei Yadayim in the fact that this is not me. But it's not Decher B'shtei Yadayim of shut it down, don't let it be, don't... how could you even think of such a thing?
Right.
And that's a really powerful point, because what I'm doing there is, and what that does is that allows me to be present in this, and to something about that, it feels more bereit, and feels like I'm actually going to be able to actually sustain that. Like I am actually being able to sustain my issue of jealousy, which comes up much more by me being able to just allow it to be here, allow it to say it's not me, talk to my friend and we can laugh together. Like it kind of makes sense, right? You get it, he gets it, we're a really good friend, he gets it. It makes total sense. Give it a bit of space. It's cute. We've got Nefesh Habehamis. And like, something about this breita approach, and it allows my Nefesh Habehamis to be like, I feel jealous, but there's something about that just feels to me like I'm able to be like much, much more showing up in my not jealousy than if I were to just to go and just to wring out, just to twist it out. Like that's an example where I feel like just giving just a little moment, a little drop of the moment of like. And most of it is so but you can talk in a philosophical way, but in a very emotional Nefesh Habehamis way. There's something about that which allows me to be able to like. I'm regarding a lot of things. This is like the obvious one in my mind right now, which I like, which is the example I think of a lot. And
I think this is about being realistic that you said before. I think that's the vart. Like being realistic means that. So again, just like being realistic in terms of the bacher, like you said before, like especially you talked about the contrast of in Litvische place where it's more the Shalei Lishma, and then maybe in Lubavitch it's too Lishma and too altruistic. Thank you, and therefore automatically a bit less realistic. So you're saying that maybe the realistic is the Nefesh Habehamis part of it. In other words, the altruistic part is the Nefesh Elokis, and not altruistic in a fluffy way and in a delusional way, because that is who you are. That's then, like you said before, the real.
That's the Chassidim in the wagon, who the whole trip's happening because of them.
Exactly. That's a beautiful framing. That and the whole point is that, right? And then comes the now. Okay, so this goes to my next point, which is, this goes to what I want to ask about, which is, in this framing, the Nefesh Habehamis is baggage. The Nefesh Habehamis is. What?
It seems, but yeah.
Okay, so that's what I want to develop, because there's what you said before, the second half of Tanya, the Dir B'Tachtonim, and then as that's in Der Shvi, right? That becomes entire focus in Der Shvi.
The volume's turned up on those blocks.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, exactly. So you said before you started saying about mental, that's why it's like mental health. I don't mind talking about contemporary framing of it. I don't think we need to.
No, but my point is just that like, I've heard people present this, and again, it might be a very, very overly simplistic. I didn't live 30 years ago, 50 years ago, I don't know. But there was definitely in the past a very, very strong emphasis on like soldier on, push through, and again, people went through, you couldn't. In the past, the circumstances did not allow you to be able to go and to really, to like give, like people just had to do it. But then as we've kind of settled into this place where we've got a lot of Gashmias, there's a whole shift now where like people want to be able to be fully in what they're doing. When they're doing, they want to do it wholesomely. They don't want to just be pushing on and twisting themselves like that, right? They want to be fully showing up. And again, this is like I heard once, I was thinking Rabbi Bell heard it. He was explaining what is the difference between the shluchim of the Frierdiker Rebbe. What's the difference between the shluchim of the Frierdiker Rebbe and the shluchim of the Rebbe? So one idea was that the shluchos of the Frierdiker Rebbe was pashat mesiras nefesh, mamash, people ready to die. On the other hand, though, the shlichus nafim were like, you had a mission and then the mission was over. Mm-hmm. You could finish your shlichus. So such a concept, man. That's what I can. Like
a shadar,
exactly. You had a mission. You went with our Rebbe. It's not mesiras nefesh, there was a lot of mesiras nefesh, especially now. I'm saying, let's remember, in the past 20 years, food can get shipped almost anywhere, and in many, many ways. Again, right. I think the ruchnistic challenge of being a shlichus is much harder. But in many ways, the gashmistic, in many ways, has become a bit easier.
Sure.
And a lot of the people shluchim live in small cities. It's more reasonable cost of doing. There's actually ways how they can. And he was saying, and again, I don't know source, but he's saying, and it seemed that the Rebbe would be happy that you'd have a nice house and be comfort and everything you need, but your whole life is shluchus.
Right.
You don't. Generally, the ideal is you go there and it's your whole life, it's everything. And that really is what love of the switch was. Is that, and again, this idea always existed, but in early generations, it was much more like you step out and then you step back. But if you go, but because you're stepping out, it could be until the end. The Dir B'Tachtonim now is in a way whereby it's much more total. And if you learn, again, I Tafshin Nun and after base, you learn the sikhs over there, and one which stands out is Rosh Hashanah Tafshin Nun. I think it's Rosh Hashanah Tafshin Nun. Well, there's a whole biur regarding, similar to the whole Tfilas Chana Sikha, but the Rebbe goes a step further, how the reason why we're asking for Gashmias is not because, I need Gashmias to serve Hashem, but like, there is a kavanah in that. And now, and let me just also expand it, based in Tanya, and one of the things I've seen very, very clearly is that, according to other philosophies, the Rambam and the Chinuch, which are very ruchnistic, and the whole goal is ruchnias, we wonder, why is it that the Eibishter made that people need to be involved in working the majority of their day? And there's such an important need for food. So simply it seems like, what are they? Like you said, they're baggage. There are things out here, and it's to test your strength. And it's a very true point. Now, the ksuf, whatever it is, I test your strength, and you overpower. But you learn Tanya, and I'm telling them, especially I'm at Zion.
One second, and even in Tanya, in the beginning of Tanya, like the Lama Hashem Kocha, right, and the Skafia,
right,
and Kol Dechia,
right, yeah, exactly. Yeah. You go to the end, you go down at Zion.
Right.
It's such I think a lot of people miss this. Even the biur is so powerful. The biur is the reason why we need to eat so much food. and we need to work so much is because we are directors of energy. And we are taking energy from the world, and we are channeling it to the Eibishter. And the reason why things which are also is because you're wasting energy. Your job is to take energy and bring everything to the Eibishter. When you're going and you're doing something which is also, you're taking the energy, like earlier in Tanya, you're bringing it down. But we are like traffic controllers of energy. And the fact that we need to eat is not just humans are frail and we need to eat. It's we want to be able to go and when we buy take a coffee bean from Ethiopia and we are drinking it and then we're learning Torah afterwards, but we are actually taking energy and you push chayas and we are bringing it to Gusha. And if you want to you can create this in my visual head that you've got this whole map of the world and this heat map of all the places and especially now with shluchim all over the world. We are part of the power of Yiddishkeit becoming so geographic. We are schlepping chayas from all over the world and bringing in. It's not baggage. The fact that we need because sleep is the hardest one, which I don't know exactly. Even that there's a way, but it's a little bit more abstract for sure. Right. But when we need to eat and we need to go and work and we need to go and buy and this and that, it's not just a distraction. It's all this part of bringing everything to the Eibishter. And I think in our own internal world, that too. It's all this big, important mission of bringing everything to the Eibishter. And and as we come more and you learn these sikhs of these years, and there's a famous sikh about the Rabbi regarding Ashira, so some things, you see the direction is very, very much going the direction which is bringing everything up, becoming all in. And I think therefore in our own internal world, it's very, very clear in Tanya, right. That, if you understand Pshat in the question, I'm going to tell you, again, try to keep this. The question is what's Lashon Ligal or Rik? Why is he working? And the answer is Chasham. And the question is Chasham. And the question is, one second, didn't we answer already?
Exactly.
And the question, which the way it's explained, I think the Rebbe explains it, is that if indeed it was a battle, Nefesh Habehamis, Nefesh Habehamis, then the way it should be is that when the Nefesh Habehamis is miskaber, Nefesh Habehamis drops off, and Nefesh Habehamis is running. The word there is, why is it mislabish in the Nefesh Habehamis? Why is it that even when my Nefesh Habehamis is motivated to do the right thing, it still works through the means of the Nefesh Habehamis? It still works through the means, and back to our mashal, which means, and when it works in means of Nefesh Habehamis, it loses its pure sense of elation and purity. Now with my instructor Zabach, I'm I want to do the right thing for the Eibishter, I'm not going to do it. And if I want to actually do it, it's going to have some of me mixed in. It's why? Why does the reality with slabshus is the question? Why is it that even after I win, because the Nefesh Habehamis and Nefesh Habehamis is going to be working through the structure of Nefesh Habehamis? Why? Mm-hmm. Why couldn't it just leave? Why couldn't it just? That's the question. And what is the biur? The biur is Diur B'Tachtonim. And ironically, a lot of the messages of Diur B'Tachtonim are regarding a person's internal world. I remember Rabbi Silverberg in Chicago. We were learning Tanya, and he says, "Where does it say V'zeh kol ha'adam sachlis b'yasei?" One of the Yud Beis Psukim, the Koch now. Where is it? It said regarding when a person in his moyach understands the Eibishter. It's in the person's internal, it's inside the body.
Yeah.
It's a crazy concept to think that. And a huge part of Diur B'Tachtonim is that. So besides it being very, in other words, it all kind of leads together. We have to be really practical. We are forced to be really practical. This is our reality that we have to come to terms with. And it's not just in the world's the reality is you're going to have to man up and become a man and get married and, and get a job and you're going to have to work hard. This is just the reality and you just have to kind of get to terms with the reality. Mm-hmm. It's no, the Eibishter runs this world. The Eibishter made everything precise. This reality that we have to get to terms with is for a reason. And there's a reason. And there's a reason why we have to engage in the world. And it's not just by chance, right? And this is why we need to go and talk how, when the people which are going to go and, especially now, there's a very big koch about shluchim, Baruch Hashem. There's also the people which have to go, and it's very, very hard. They have to be in the world. And in that space, be Chassidus Yidden. It's a very, very challenging thing. But there's a reason why you're there, and you are vital. You are in many ways you might be, but also in your own world. You're bringing it to really, really places, and you're working, doing everything. With Yiras Shamayim. There's a reason. It's not just get to terms, and also in our own internal world, come to terms with the reality of Nefesh Habehamis. No, there's a reason why. And again, this is not so much regarding the Yetzer Hara aspect, and that's
right.
Not I'm talking more about Nefesh Habehamis.
Right, exactly. So tie that back. So to Diur B'Tachtonim within the person, and go back to being realistic. So in other words, the same way that we're understanding this on a broader level about like taking energy from the different places that it's for an actual kavana. So how would that work? You started touching on it internally. How can you spell that out? About like, what is the when I deal with my Nefesh Habehamis and I'm not thinking about it as baggage, I'm thinking about it as harvesting energy for Hashem. What would that mean in a more internal level?
So, if I understand you, the Nefesh Habehamis, right, amongst Ruchnius is the most related to physical, right? The Nefesh Habehamis is like in a deep harmony with the body. Right. It's the Nefesh of the body. It's the Behema. Yeah. And because what we're trying to do, and the reason we came to a Guf and Nefesh Habehamis is to uplift. So I mean, even just first of all, the way Tanya says it is Pashim said physically, right? Any Maisa is going to have to physically happen through your body, but on a more internal and psychological level, is we need to develop a kishmak. I remember I heard a kishmak from Rabbi Levitansky, in LA. At one point he was ringing and he was saying, Avada, if you've got Kabbalah's Earl and you have it, it carries you through everything. He says, but what if you're Levitansky? And you've got no Shaykh's Kabbalah, so he said, so then you have to develop a Geshmak. You have to develop a Geshmak. And what does Geshmak mean? Is that Nefesh Habehamis, Nefesh Habehamis?
Sure, Nefesh Habehamis, yeah. The Geshmak that we feel, that we experience.
Too, yeah, exactly. In the motivation too, we need to go and strategize. And and the reality is, there's a thing, there's a lot of strategizing. And I would say a part of knowing Nefesh Habehamis is, and by the Chassidus usually you need to learn the Talmud, or even you as a teacher, of the teacher, to know what works for you and motivates you. We have to come to terms with this reality, which is perfect and made that way for a reason, to uplift every single part of us and every single part of others. And therefore, like the mechanism is what's going to motivate is also not by chance, because that also, in other words, just like physically we're going to do it through our guf and Nefesh Habehamis, also the motivation which is going to actually make us get there is also going to be Nefesh Habehamis. And with the mashal of the chassidim and the animal needs hay, but for a lot of our Nefesh Habehamis, it might not be so simple what the hay of our Nefesh Habehamis is, and we've got to go and strategize and sit and talk, and I would argue sometimes even that, there's ways of but when dealing with building people up, sometimes you might even need to build people up with things which are not directly inside the obvious place of Kedusha. But when you go and develop someone's talent in music and art, and you see the stories with the Rebbe regarding especially the artists, right? You develop people's talents in these kind of things, and these are things that are actually good. And again, the Eibishter made them talented in art. Nefesh Habehamis, precise, for a reason, made them talented in music. If we just go and ignore that, and I've read in the places in other communities, they were shun, people for a good man shun that. It's a distraction.
Right.
It's a distraction from your avodah. And we would go and say, the Eibishter did that for a reason. Now again, be very careful. You don't let that. Nefesh Habehamis is right next to the Yetzer Hara.
Right.
The Yetzer Hara is the midas, and they can pull in. You've got to be very, very careful, very cautious. But I would say building people up means building them up where the Nefesh Habehamis is. And when I'm dealing with Bachrim or with friends or people, it's all about finding the spark. And there is a spark. And the hardest things when you deal with Bachrim, which are shut down, they don't know what their own spark is. And that's really difficult. But I wouldn't find a spark on anything. You find something where they're alive. And then you as a role model, with your Nefesh Habehamis, or internally, I am all about the Eibishter. But then I'm like a musician, you are able to fuse them. Mm-hmm. And that's really, it's regarding motivation, it's regarding a person's talents, a personality. We go out and we use our personality to go to the world, and you're Baruch Hashem going using your talents, I'm using my talents. We're trying to go and use our talents for, what that's using Nefesh Habehamis. Talk about our talents. In fact, Nefesh Habehamis is this word which, that's why actually when I was thinking here, I come walking in and I'm like, for me, the topic where my heart is Nefesh Habehamis. And people might say, what? Nefesh Habehamis, that's a funny topic, but I actually really think that it's fundamental. And for me, in my own internal world, it's been very, very fundamental, because when I've given it space and I'm learning to allow me to do things in my way, which works with Nefesh Habehamis. Again, I say my way, I don't mean it in a chassidus. I mean to the chassidim are going to the Rebbe, but I'm trying to find that right horse to pull the wagon, right? So in my own internal world as a mechanech, not looking at other people's Nefesh Habehamis, like the horse which works for his wagon or for my wagon, it's different moods, different things. For me personally, it's helped a lot, and I try this, I try this, with everyone I work with, And it's just, it might seem really basic, but making people feel good about who they are and about their talents, and making people feel that when they get involved in Torah, they are found there and they are alive, and that they have a space and a place within Yiddishkeit. It's not just the Nefesh Habehamis, but the Nefesh Habehamis. And that, them with their talents, they can come into the sphere of shlichus, of hafotz, or whatever it is, and people desperately want you. They like you because of who you are. I have a lot of bachim in my class, and it's painful for me to say, who good boys, and they're going to work the hardest to learn, and they'll maybe get a 70 on their test and feel good about that. And question, is this guy in yeshiva, his Nefesh Habehamis, Baruch Hashem, he's learning Torah, but is he feeling good in yeshiva? Is he feeling like he's showed up with who is in yeshiva? No. But we can actually go, and again, for some reason it's in really good yeshiva, YOEC, it's very, very normal to do this, but a lot of mainstream yeshivas. But we need to try to go and help everybody find their spark. And again, some people it's more obvious, some people less obvious. To be able to be present in yeshiva, to be able to show up with a whole being and say, me, with my individuality, I have a place here and I'm needed. And when you talk about everybody being needed in everybody being needed in this world, in a certain way, that talks a lot to Nefesh Habehamis. In a Nefesh Habehamis is much harder. What does that mean? I don't know.
Right.
There probably is such an idea too. But there's also about, your neshama came down into a guf, into your guf, not somebody else's guf. Your mission, who you're here for. If we can just do this, and with everybody, just people in shul, we go to see a friend in shul, help everybody find a spark. Let everybody go to see, especially if you're someone who represents Torah, that you like them for who they are, for their talent. And you look up to them and you respect them for their expertise, and you building them, slowly we can, Nefesh Habehamis, Nefesh Habehamis, and we can just make them kind of create some kind of fusion and work in harmony and synergy. And that's the Tanya to me. When Mashiach comes, what's the world going to be? What's Mashiach going to be? It's a goyla with an aleph inside. This is all, and it's the same world, and we've just got the Eibishter in that. And that's just a brilliant and beautiful place to be.
Amen. Beautiful. By the way, I can tell you're a good teacher, Maggid Shiur. Not that you need my askama, because you, I think, brilliantly encapsulated everything we were talking about in the last 4 minutes. I was very focused on what we were saying in the last few minutes, and you brought everything together between the being realistic, between the two identities, between making people feel being felt and heard, and that the Nefesh Habehamis is the talents that are showing up and experiencing life in the real way. And therefore, that's what needs to be on board. That was very geschmacka for Brangen.
This is my heart.
Thank you very much. Thank you for coming and sharing, and especially in the busy weekend, and especially our Shabbos. So I really appreciate that.
And
we'll
think ourselves afterwards how to make this have a difference in our bottom line.
Yeah,
when we go
exactly.
Back to our own
That's the das. That's the work in the trenches.
Yeah.
Thank you.